Shows and conferences with video game announcements usually hold the best for last, you know, the one more thing kind of approach. But to be honest, one of the most interesting games coming out of Gamescom's O&L this year was not revealed at the end, but actually in a pre-show. Valor Mortis is a very unusual thing because it's set in the Napoleonic era with the world more reminiscent of Resident Evil than actual history, and then it takes the Souls-like formula and puts it in the first-person perspective. Since I live in the same city as the game's developers, I decided to pay them a visit and I got a small look behind the scenes. I got to play Valor Mortis for about an hour and a half, and we had a nice little chat about the development, and as always, that will be a part of my impressions. So if you'd like to find out more about the game, the inspirations behind it, how it wasn't always a Souls-like, and where and how you can actually play it yourself before release, stick around for a while. One More Level is the developer most famously known for Ghost Runner, in which you run, slash, run some more, kill enemies, run and jump, and do all of that in the fastest and coolest way possible. I was pretty surprised to learn that their next game is not exactly similar to Ghost Runner, or is it? Let's look back to where it all began.
So basically that was the whole different game at the beginning, with a code name Cyber Slash, and right now, as you can see, it's far from being cyber. Maybe there is a bit of slashing, quite a lot to be honest, but other than that, it was a code name. So for the last 2 years we've been working on this game, and the concept born that we wanted to have a setting that is at the same time epic but also grounded, and we felt that Napoleonic Wars is somehow unused setting for the action games. There are a lot of strategy games set in the Napoleonic Wars, and with this our dark twist of the corruption that is spreading in our game world, this is something fresh for the players what we have here. So in terms of settings, that was the beginning, and also in terms of gameplay, the game was quite different at the beginning. It wasn't a Souls-like, and we made the decision that we would like to switch it to the Souls-like, because we always wanted to create a Souls-like, to be honest.
So how different was it? Like, was the whole gameplay loop more slashery, like action RPG, or like what was the thing?
It was more kind of Resident Evil, I would say, even.
Yeah, it was more horror, maybe not survival horror, but more like a first-person action game without all the Souls-like elements.
Okay. Yeah, to be clear, we were talking about, you know, very basic prototypes that we tested. Yeah, but that's true that we didn't know back then that it's gonna be a Souls-like. Like Rado said, yeah, it was our dream to one day, you know, create it our own Souls-like, because we love the genre. We wanted to be part of it. Yeah, so we are happy it's happening.
Yeah.
Everything is obviously a part of the process, so while it might have started as more of a Resident Evil-like game, you shouldn't get attached to that idea or miss it for some reason, especially that it was early in the development process and it naturally evolved to what Valor Mortis is right now. And it's a first-person perspective Souls-like. I'm still a bit amazed to hear about that combo. Not only from software games, but also all the other titles inspired by them, be that Lies of P or Lords of the Fallen or Black Myth Wukong, they all utilize the third-person perspective. It's clearly associated with the genre. But since One More Level liked the gameplay idea of a Souls-like game, but is really experienced in doing FPP games with a guy running with a katana, they gave it their own spin. But there were obviously challenges.
It was tough, of course. You know, it's just not just about moving the camera. The change of the perspective, like, affects everything. We had to create our own combat system from the scratch, basically. Of course, when you play it, it feels kind of similar to what you may expect. But under the mask, it's very different. It has to be built differently, and it's something that we, you know, have to experiment a lot and look for a right direction. Honestly, there wasn't much references actually that we can like refer to.
Yeah.
There's no many FPP Souls-like games. There are some indies, but to be honest, not like a FPP Souls-like big title, AAA, or even AA. So yeah, I believe we are making something fresh and unique. Yeah, of course we had pretty big experience with FPP games already. Exactly. After creating 2 Ghost Runners. Of course, we used a lot of that experience and knowledge creating Valor Mortis, but a lot of stuff had to be approached differently.
Speaking of challenges, there are obstacles for the developers in their designing process, but there's also challenges that the players will face in the game itself. That is a vastly different game than both Ghost Runners are, so where is the difficulty that players will encounter when getting into Valor Mortis?
Well, they are not that able to run through the whole level that easy as in Ghost Runner.
Not the first time.
No wall running. Well,
We will see about it. No wall running for now.
Yeah, we can say that there will be a lot of Ghost Runner DNA also in Valor Mortis.
Yeah, there will be some movement mechanics inspired by our great titles.
Yeah, but going back to the question where is difficulty, definitely it's at a different point. Ghost Runner required you a lot of reflex and precision, and you had to be agile with your inputs, with your fingers. And in soulslike titles, we know that difficulty lies in some other place. You have to be more patient, you have to be more methodical.
You have to be cautious about your surroundings, keeping the right distance between you and the enemy, learning their movements. I mean, the enemies in Ghost Runner were quite simple. They were just doing single or double kind of attacks. And here you have quite complex moveset for maybe not each, but many of the enemies that you have to learn. And then when you master it, then you can, of course, be very effective on the battlefield in our game. But it takes some time, of course, to adapt. Still, I think it's kind of fast game compared to the other Souls-likes. But when we compare it to Ghost Runner, it's definitely way slower.
Yeah. So once again, we creating a difficult game. It's like our thing, but it's difficult in a bit different way than Ghost Runner.
Demanding. Yeah, quite demanding, but a lot of satisfaction that comes after you overcome all these obstacles on your way is a huge thing, and something that really push players forward into this game world.
so do you think people who don't play Souls-like games because of the difficulty can still give Valor Mortis a chance?
I think yes. I mean, it's the whole change of perspective. If you are good at first-person games, first-person shooters, first-person slashers, there are some games in this genre, then you will find it easier for you, as a player, compared to when you try the other Souls-likes, like the third-person Souls-likes. There are a lot of this kind of games.
One more thing regarding the development process are obviously inspirations. While you can definitely see where it comes from because the Ghost Runner DNA is still visible here, what were the other games that influenced the developers when working on this one?
Well, in terms of mood, for sure the Resident Evil is one of the inspirations, because we have this in terms of color palette, but also in terms of the horror that we have in game. And also in terms of gameplay, for sure we love Lies of P, for example. It's like a huge title that's one of the best Souls-like outside of From Software games. Huge inspiration for us, that's for sure. And first-person titles also. I mean, there is a lot of them with shooting mechanics, but also with the dual wielding. So we cannot escape from the being compared to like titles like Dishonored or Bioshock. But this is quite a different game. But still, when you see this, then you start comparing these titles. But yeah, it's a mix of things, and it's the same that we experienced when we were creating Ghost Runners. It's like mix of mechanics that we really love, and with a sprinkle of our own approach, something like that. Yeah.
We could say that it's a mix of our experience as a gamers. Like we're picking what we like from different games that we play, that we enjoy.
Yeah, that's true. We are always wanted to make a game. I mean, that's what we are always doing. That we are making a game that we would love to play ourselves. And we know that when it's good, when we have a lot of fun when we play it like 100 times, and it still have fun when playing it. That's the sign that you are doing the right job.
Before we go back to my guests, let me actually tell you a bit more about the game. In Valor Mortis, you play as William, a British guy who joined Napoleon's army, which is a bit unexpected. And another weird thing is you died, and for some reason you find yourself rising from the dead, and there's so many supernatural things happening around you. I got to play the very beginning of the game to slowly get to know the mechanics of it. So you begin with a saber of sorts, and that's your main melee weapon, but you pretty quickly get access to a handgun that has pretty limited ammo, so it's not like it's suddenly a shooter game either. That dual wield works pretty neat, but it's not the only set of weapons you'll have in the game. In that reveal trailer we did see a musket, and in the game there was an option to open the weapon wheel, but there were no new things to choose from at this stage. The studio is yet to reveal what kind of weapons we're going to work with. During combat you get to use normal attacks, heavy attacks, you dodge, block and parry, and all of that uses your stamina. Well, not parrying, because if you do it right, you're rewarded with filling the enemy's stagger bar and you don't lose your endurance. So combat is all about managing your stamina, making sure you suddenly don't run out of it when your enemy goes into a frenzy. Once you get the hang of the timing of combat, it feels really satisfying, and it's coming from a guy who really sucks at soulslikes. So it wasn't the easiest of experiences for me in the beginning, but the whole thing feels natural, so there is a way to master the gameplay loop even if you're not confident in playing Souls-like games. I found myself rarely using heavy attacks, but that might be me just too anxious to commit to dealing this kind of damage when you can actually die pretty quick if you're not careful, so I'm more of a defensive kind of player. In a typical Souls-like manner, you meet a lot of trash mobs along the way, some of them jumping at you out of nowhere. You find checkpoints in forms of lanterns that allow you for some rest and upgrading your skill thanks to catalysts that you collect from the enemies. If you rest at the lantern, the enemies respawn in the area. If you die, you drop your catalysts, but to make things a bit more accessible in first person, you don't need to manually pick them up when you get back to where you died, but it's actually picked up automatically when you're near, which makes a lot of sense with the first person camera and how limited your field of view is compared to the third person. And, you know, all of that sounds like a Souls-like, but indeed transferred into FPP. Apart from these kinds of weapons, I got to use some magic as well, this time in the form of a hand flamethrower, kind of. The level design was pretty straightforward for now, with the corridors leading you forward, but every now and then you come across some optional places where you can either find a reward, a difficult enemy, or a piece of lore, obviously surrounded by enemies. It's worth exploring though, because you will be using all the help you can get to make your character stronger. The game generally is supposed to have a lot of space for optional exploration if you wish to do so. Also, I like the art style of the game with the body horror and the ever-present plague that haunts the area. You can see it in the environment, you can see it in the characters, and it's very fitting to the subject of war. And yeah, you can really see the inspirations that Radek mentioned before. But what's obviously the most gruesome and will be the most characteristic is the design of bosses. I only got to fight one of the bosses in the game, the first one, apart from the optional elite enemy, and it was manageable. I mean, I got through his first phase on the first attempt, but got killed after only getting 25% of his health in phase 2, but just like in Souls-like games, you had to observe and learn the moveset of the enemy. The thing is, while it's still a boss fight that is not the easiest thing in the world, it felt fair. The boss is telegraphing his attacks pretty clearly, there's a reasonable window of time to react, so if you just focus, it's doable. And it's really coming from a guy who is not good at Souls-likes and doesn't have the patience for them. But does this mean the game is easy? No, I'd say it's more difficult than games like the Jedi series from Respawn, but it's definitely easier than what From Software does. Or maybe it's the first-person perspective that helped me a lot, I don't know. Though if it is, it's a testament to what the studio is doing, because on one hand FPP limits your vision, but I could see everything clearly when fighting that big guy.
That was a huge challenge to, balance the enemy bounce, the range of the weapons, player weapons and enemy weapons. We have to use a lot of tricks that hopefully won't be seen when you play it. You just have to feel right.
So the one example is this changing of field of view when you are approaching the boss.
A lot of camera assist, snapping, stuff that are not required in first-person games, because you see a lot of more stuff.
It's also to not have this clunkiness feeling when you are fighting with the enemies. So we want to avoid it, that the game it feels smooth, right? That you can, that the assets that are in this game are not that visible, but it's more like that when you play it, it just feels good that your hits are hitting or at the right time, and when you feel that your hit should connect with the enemy, it's connecting with the enemy, and it just works. And that's maybe it sounds that it's quite easy to make, but it's a lot of small things that are connecting to each other, gives you the proper experience of this first-person combat, your range, so the timing of your parries, where it should be timed, of course the hit reaction of the enemies. It's like a few departments of the of our studio have to work together on each of these features. So yeah, so that's a lot of small things, and we keep improving it. It's probably what you see here in the demo. It's not like the final version. We are still in the pre-alpha stage of development, so we'll be working on it further. Also looking forward for the feedback that we will get during playtest.
My only complaint regarding the combat was that it wasn't always clear to me why the enemy's attacks didn't connect with me, and every now and then it threw me a little bit off balance. But we gotta remember, it's a pre-alpha stage of development, and there's still a lot of time the studio will spend on finishing the game and seeing that combat is the core part of the experience, so I'm pretty sure it will still get better and better. And speaking of where one more level is regarding the development...
Yeah, there are still things that we are working on, but we see the finish line right now. I mean, it's we are not far from it to just, switch to this more polishing kind of phase of the game development. But yeah, still there are a lot of things to do. We feel good about 2026, but still there are some things that to be done. Yeah.
I gotta say, I liked my time with Valor Mortis, and in a way it was surprising to me. I really thought that a Souls-like game would not be my kind of thing, but I really appreciate what the studio did with Ghost Runner, so I wanted to give it a try. And I don't regret it one bit. The first-person perspective really changes how you approach this game. It's not really like Dishonored or KCD combat-wise, but it's not exactly like FromSoft games either. Also, I forgot to tell you before, but the progression system at this stage of the game is pretty straightforward. You spend catalysts to upgrade your character, be that more health, more stamina, or more of this mana kind of thing. Once you put enough points into the first tier, the next one unlocks, and you can upgrade the following tier that can have things related to bonuses to parrying or blocking. I mean, that's what it is right now. One thing that will change how you play are the ambers that heavily change the rules of engagement. For example, you might get slow motion on aiming the ranged weapon, but then you lose stamina as a result. Or you can use an amber that changes your healing flasks into flasks replenishing your mana, and the only way to regain HP is by using those magical powers. So there is a lot of flexibility in terms of how you'll be able to beat this game, and obviously there will also be more weapons coming further on. There's still things that have to be polished. Not everything was so crisp visually as I'd like it to be, especially when you get these kinds of echoes/visions, but I'm really looking forward to testing it again when the playtest comes later this year. But the studio was at Gamescom, allowed people to play the game right after the reveal, and they're not done with events either.
So we are heading to Tokyo Game Show next week. Also there is a playtest, and next year we'll see. I mean, it's there will be some events for sure, because we like to show the game to the players, we like public demos, and yeah, I think next year also will be busy for us.
Can anyone actually sign up for the playtest, or like how does it work? Okay.
It's on Steam, everyone can sign up, and many players will get the access, so yeah. We'll invite all of them.
So this sums up the behind-the-scenes look at Valor Mortis. I already added it to my wishlist, I requested access to the playtest, and I really can't wait to experience a bit more of the game. Sure, it was just a starting level, but I got to play through it twice. I got to experience actually getting better at this game and getting somewhere, in a Souls-like, which is not normal for me. And all of that has me a bit hooked. Thank you for watching. Take care.